Hey everybody, I just wanted to take a moment to first extend my heart, my care, and my compassion to everyone impacted by the recent tornado in Northwest Indiana. Beyond that, I definitely want to extend my heart um, and hurt and pain that I feel for friends and family members and the communities in which I grew up in Gary, Indiana, more specifically. And after watching Glenn Robinson's video, it reminded me of a story when I was a little kid. So my grandmother, um, home was is on or old home was on 2300 Jackson Street, literally two streets over from Roosevelt. And when I was a little kid, I remember being at the house like a Friday night or whatever it may be, and I could literally hear people over at the stadium at Roosevelt cheering Glenn Robinson on as he was giving whoever he was playing at that time that work. And it was really inspiring to see the likes of Glenn Robinson, and I know others privately who have made contributions and are finding ways to give back and serve the city of Gary. And in keeping with um, the example that Glenn Robinson has set, and so many others that are giving and serving in a community and helping others in a community from afar, I'd like to do the same. And so my family will be making a contribution to the Legacy Foundation of Northwest Indiana, and more specifically to a fund that is earmarked to benefit individuals in Gary, Indiana, more specifically. So the reason why I'm choosing this particular fund to make contributions to because it's a foundation and I actually serve on a board for the foundation of the area in which I currently live. And whenever there's some major thing that's happening or major event, um, those who aren't able to sit at the table and to be fellowshipping and working with other individuals who are working very diligently to try to solicit resources and to effectively address a need in the community as quickly and as swiftly as we possibly can to serve the community. And oftentimes these things are done in a way where people don't see them and don't see the impact and the lives that are being served. But I get an opportunity to see those things every day in the work that I'm doing. Stewardship is also something that's important to me. Accountability is something that's important to me. Being able to call the foundation and say, hey, where we are, how much money has come in, how much has been given out, what's the impact, like that's important to me because that's a part of the service work of what I'm currently doing and aspiring to doing where I am, and then also trying to, in a small way, give back to help those from where I am from and what lives in me and through me, and that's being straight from the G, quite honestly. So this is a really, really important thing, and I just wanted to share that explicitly. Now, that being said, I think it would be an incredibly powerful dynamic if we think about the local residents who live in Gary who are impacted, but thinking about all the people who came through Gary, who benefited from Gary in so many different ways, and actually are in positions and are doing amazing and extraordinary things from afar. I think that this is an excellent opportunity to join in those who are in Gary and those who are from afar to contribute in meaningful ways. And I would like to ask if you would join me in giving as well. The way that I see it, if 1,000 people contributed $100 to the Greater Gary Foundation, and I'll share more information about that momentarily here, that would be reasonably uh, another $100,000 that potentially can go to providing support. And that's only at the bare minimum of 100. There are those of you who may want to give more. If I've served you in any way, in any capacity, and you've always felt compelled to pay me back in some type of way. I would love to encourage you in this moment to give to the foundation as well. And I'll include a link in the comment section or in my bio as it relates to this particular communication. Um, yeah, my mom literally was without power for almost 8 or 9 days, and has recently gotten power back. Has experienced storm damage. Unfortunately, a neighbors of hers, her and her husband lost their life due to an explosion based on the impact of the storm. And there are a lot of families and households that are reeling as a result of this type of devastation. And I don't think that just simply saying that individuals have been without power for 8 days is enough of a conversation. Um, it it can have psychological and emotional impacts, simply because the stress and duress could be triggering. So we can see instances of child abuse, we can see instances of domestic violence as a result to this type of stress. We can see situations where people have medications and things of that nature that they need, life-saving equipment that they were not able to access or not be able to have, and can compound or increase medical related instances as it relates to those individuals. Um, Being out without power for 8 to 9 days, we're looking at spoilage of food and things of that nature. Maybe not having access to food. Um, we're also thinking about being without power for 8 or 9 days, generally speaking. Individuals may not be able to go to work. And if you're not able to go to work and you don't already have an emergency fund, which means that your basic necessities and needs, maybe life-saving support for medication and things of that nature, food, are going to take precedence over maybe paying your NIPSCO bill, maybe paying for rent or mortgage, maybe paying a car note or whatever it may be, because now we have loss of basic necessities, and we also are in a situation where we have loss of income. So my concern here is that there's a cascading effect of need, both in the present that are rooted in the compounding impact of over an 8 day period, and then how that bleeds into the lived reality of individuals after the lights come on, after the narrative changes, after the spotlight moves away from Gary, Indiana, and individuals are still going to need ongoing support and care, emotional support, financial support, and the likes. And so all these things are incredibly important as we're thinking about this and thinking holistically in terms of what the strategy is and what the demands are. And I do think that there's a great opportunity to, again, to continue to press NIPSCO for financial relief for individuals. I do think soliciting landlords and maybe finding ways to provide financial relief for individuals as it relates to housing, and not just from the lens of going to a local organization and receiving resources to pay for X, Y, and Z, but maybe indirectly providing relief to landlords, possibly. Where individuals don't have to pay, or there's a lot of different ways to kind of think about it, but there's something to be considered there. Individuals who have car notes and all that jazz. Well, um, what I what I know about human nature is that when there is no longer a spotlight and there's not accountability in any regards, individuals that are considered to be marginal or to consider being the least of these, unfortunately, are treated marginally and like the least of these unless a spotlight is shown, which means that in instances, someone may still try to evict someone, even though everything that's transpired is transpired. Someone may still may report to the credit bureaus that someone didn't pay, and now there's this impact on their credit for something that they didn't have complete control over. Someone may try to repossess a vehicle because of a late payment, because of something like these things are things that will be happening, unfortunately, behind the scenes as soon as the spotlight goes away, as soon as the narrative goes away. So the reason why I'm speaking up on this particular situation, because I see things systematically and as systems, and anything that we can do to think about things systematically, not just the lights being on, but then also thinking about what are the infrastructure needs in Gary, Indiana, and pressing NIPSCO potentially to increase hiring locally in the area and specifically in Gary, Indiana, so that NIPSCO can pay people in Gary to work on infrastructure so that in the event that something like this happens again, that infrastructure may not be a reason why we're seeing a delayed response or an inability to get things up quickly and efficiently because of deferred maintenance. And unfortunately, in what we perceive to be marginalized communities and marginalized people, there's not an emphasis there. So while the spotlight is shining, we need to really be considering a post-mortem analysis on what happened. We know what happened with the storm, but what went wrong? And then how we make very clear demands on how we can make this right. Financially for individuals, creating some relief through NIPSCO, maybe providing a discount on bills or going into the next month that nobody has to pay the NIPSCO bill. That can be a legitimate demand. Beyond that, if there's infrastructural needs, that maybe we engage in a process of hiring individuals in Gary and paying people in Gary to provide that ongoing upkeep and maintenance so that in the event that something happens again, we have the human capital within the community to address the needs of the community. Like, honestly, that just makes sense to me. But I think that as we navigate this, there's a distinct opportunity to drive a narrative around a greater Gary and a greater self-sufficient Gary and charting a path forward rooted in community. And then how do we do this together so that we can build the city that we hope for and not have to wait on other people to build it for us. Okay. So I'll stop there because I can continue to go down a rabbit hole on all these things, but I want to share something really quickly. Here is the information from the for the Legacy Foundation. If you go on a website, you can find a whole host of information. If we go over here about the foundation, again, I believe in stewardship, accountability, and impact when it comes to these things. Down at the bottom, you can actually get information about the financials from the Legacy Foundation and you can get information about their strategic plan and what type of impact that they are trying to have within the communities in which they are serving. And as someone who serves on a community foundation, I can speak directly to the impact that we have, the spirit and heart of these individuals, and the people silently that live in your community and around your community that are giving very generously to provide support that you would never know that these individuals were giving in the way that they were to help people and to give back in our community. So if we click on view all funds really quickly here, when I do that, I'm going to scroll down. It's going to provide information about all the different types of funds. But if we select a category, and we go into emergency disaster relief, one of the things that's going to pop up is the Greater Gary Storm Recovery and Relief Fund. If I click on it, it doesn't provide a complete list of all the details as it relates to how the funds are going to be used. However, it is a start, generally speaking, and it is set up and designed to help to serve individuals. If I'm not mistaken, that the city of Gary has made a statement, at least initially, in terms of how those funds will be used for relief and support for individuals in Gary, Indiana, more specifically. And that's my focus here. That being said, one of the things that I will be doing is that I'll be reaching out to the foundation on a weekly basis, and I will be providing update videos moving forward in terms of how things are coming along, how are we serving, and hopefully this could be a resource and a tool that can be of assistance to everyone as it relates to this process. In terms of, again, stewardship, accountability, things of that nature, and impact. And then you can click on the Greater Gary Storm information and you can make a one-time donation or a reoccurring donation. We'll be making a reoccurring donation over the course of the year. So there is information here as it relates to this. Now, one of the big conversations that we need to address as it relates to giving back is trust, because trust is an appreciating asset. Unfortunately, when you come from communities where there's mistrust or people make promises and things don't happen in a way that you hope for them to happen, and it feels like no one shows up for you. And that was my lived experience growing up in Gary, Indiana. I learned at a very early age that no one is coming to save you. And you have to be intentional about saving and protecting and caring for yourself. But what I also learned from having navigated many seasons after leaving Gary, Indiana, is that we also have the capacity to become the change that we seek. So instead of seeking for others to do the things that we had wished that others had done for us, we can become the people to be the person that we wish that we would have had at some point in time. Hurt people, people, healed people. And so I think that this is a beautiful reflection of what this could look like. And again, I'll be making a reoccurring contribution over the remaining of course of the year. And I again ask for you to do the same. But as it relates to trust, really, really quickly, I think it's very important to understand if this is a 501(c)(3) organization. One of the ways that you can do this is that you can go to IRS. We can go under, this is irs.gov. We can go to the file website. We can go to file, and under it, we click on charities and nonprofits. And if I scroll down here, we can search for organizations. And I'm just going to go to the tax exempt organization tool. We'll do another click here. And then we have information where we can look up organizations with our community, the EIN number, which is identification number for the Legacy Foundation. I just looked that up really quickly here. You can find it just with a quick Google search. And I'm going to go back to tax exempt form. I'm going to enter that here, and then we're going to search. So we have Legacy Foundation Inc. in Maryville, Indiana. We have Pub 78 data. If I click on this, it tells us that organizations eligible to receive tax-deductible charitable contributions, users may rely on this list in determining deductibility of their contributions. Now, I know if you're watching this video, you're probably not giving for a tax benefit, but it's also important to understand as relates to giving the tax code. And there are some changes that are happening in 2026 as relates to the tax code. So previously, if someone was to give to a charitable organization, that is one that could receive a deduction. The only way that you could receive that deduction is if you itemized when you were filing your taxes, meaning that you were not going to use the standard deduction. Due to changes to the tax code, under President Trump, and I want to say 2017-ish or thereabouts, the deductions and credits and things of that nature changed drastically, where the standard deduction was increased substantially, which meant that it kind of simplified the way that individuals engage in the process of filing their taxes, where fewer people itemized and just about everyone utilized the standard deduction. And as a result, if you made a charitable contribution and the standard deduction was greater than what it would have been itemized, you would just use the standard deduction and there would be no benefit to you for a charitable contribution. 2026, that changes. If you're a single filer and you make a contribution to a charitable organization of $1,000, you will actually be able to claim that deduction for your taxes this year. If you are married filing jointly, then that would be a $2,000 deduction that you would be able to apply towards your taxes. So I say this to say that there will be a tax benefit as well, even though that your heart isn't potentially giving for a tax benefit. You would inadvertently, on the flip side of it, be blessed, if I could use that terminology and language, by giving and it actually having a direct impact on your taxes. So I'm going to go back one slide, and then also copies of returns. I've actually gone through and looked at the financials for the Legacy Foundation, but you can drop down and pull up that information for yourself. 2024 Form 990 filing. They have the more recent 990 filing on their website, but it is clean, and it is something that I think that potentially, if you were looking at making a contribution, that this is something that you should consider as it relates to this process. Okay. So I just wanted to kind of share this information with you. And if we wanted to pull up the form, the 980 form so that you can just see it here, we can actually scroll down and it kind of gives a snapshot of different information about the exempt status of the Legacy Foundation. It tells us about revenue. It tells us about expenses in terms of grants and things that have been paid out to the organization, any revenue that they have, investment revenue, contributions that individuals have made, so on and so forth. That information is listed here. And again, you can also go onto their website and actually, let me go all the way back to the main page here. About. And then we can pull up the financials of the organization. We can scroll down and pull up some information about their financials. And we can actually download the 2025 audited financials, their 990 form, their investment policy in terms of how they manage money and grow money as well. All that information is listed here. And the only reason why I bring this up is because, again, when you come from Gary, Indiana, like I have, um, it's hard to trust. It's and when we say trust, it's hard to actually really consider that people actually care about you and your well-being and your safety and your economic mobility and your health and all these other different things. Um, because when you come from a city like I come from, people oftentimes view you as the least of these, as expendable. um, as if something happens to these people, everyone will move on and nobody will care. And unfortunately, that was my lived reality growing up in many instances. Nobody's coming to save you. But what I've realized is that for some little boy or some little girl or some family in Northwest Indiana, and Gary more specifically, I don't want them to grow up in a Gary where they don't believe that they have value outside of their home. So it's very important that we create the space to become the change that we seek. So again, my ask and my call to you is to join me in making a contribution to the Legacy Foundation, um, as others have done and as others are continuing to give back and to serve in amazing ways. And it's not that one way is better than the other. It's just that all of these things matter in the greater whole. And while the spotlight is on Gary, I think it's very important to give individuals actionable things that they can do so that there are resources that are available to continue to sow into Gary long after people are no longer thinking about Gary. But those of us who are from Gary will continue to think about Gary and continue to think about hopefully how we can serve and have an impact with the resources, with the social capital, um, with anything that we have in any way that we can to ensure that generations to come feel loved, supported, and cared for in such a way that we create a legacy of constantly and continually giving back and understanding that we have the power to make Gary greater Gary. So I will stop my share there. I hope that maybe this video inspires someone in a small way to join me and my family in acts of generosity in the way that we serve Gary, Indiana. If you are someone who went to high school with me, if you are someone who graduated from any of the surrounding local high schools, I went to work, uh, and you're no longer in Gary, and you're in a position in a space where you're saying prayers for Gary, and trying to find a way maybe to move beyond prayers, but to actually give the person a blanket who's cold, to be able to ensure that individuals who are picking up the pieces at least can have the nourishment and the safety and security and warmth needed to deal with any trauma that may come out of this situation, so that they can be the best version of themselves in order to build and to reassure themselves and their families, that we have the capacity to withstand any storms that may come and a resolve to do that because we feel loved and cared for. And that's what generosity is. Generosity at its core is literally just allowing, just telling someone that you are seen, I love you, and I care about you. And so I'm not doing anything that other people aren't already doing and aren't already communicating and talking about it. I just wanted to provide a little bit more context in terms of my why this is important to me and why I think that you should join me in this endeavor of giving back to Gary. And if you don't choose to do that through the Legacy Foundation, you can go to the 501c3 tax information and find other organizations that are good stewards, that are having an impact, and that are accountable for the work that they're doing. Because what people in Gary don't need right now is another unfulfilled promise. They need people who are going to show up and get stuff done. Let's be the change that we seek. Y'all take care, and I'll chat with you later. Bye.